Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda, and it is Friday, and we are not here for 5 on Friday. And we probably won't be here for 5 on Friday until 2025. Let me explain. In December and January, there are a lot of extra videos that I want to do. Things like wrap-ups and best ofs and goals, those sorts of things. But there's only so many days in the month, and I still want to do the videos that I do every month. So it's getting a little crowded. So I'm not going to be doing any 5 on Fridays this month. I don't know if I'm going to do any more videos on Friday this month, but this one is not 5 on Friday. If you've read the title and everything, this is my November book haul revisit. Excuse me. This is my December book haul revisit. Months here. I had originally planned to put this, with my November book haul. So I was going to do my November 2024 book haul and then my December book haul revisit, which is December 2023, in one video. But if you've seen my book haul for November, that was a long video. So I didn't do that. So I had to break it up. We're going to hear, and we're going to do December. And December is always a really interesting month for books because a lot of them are like gifts or books that I buy for things that I know I'm going to be reading in the coming year. So yeah. Anyway, and if you don't know what a book haul revisit is, this is, I believe, Doris at Aldi Books started doing this. And what it is you basically look back to previous years. And I only have 1 year. I only really started keeping track last year. So I'm only going back to December 2023 this year. Next year, I'll go 23, 24. See how that works. And we're going to look at all the books that I brought in and if I've read them or unhauled them or what's going on. Now, I will say for brevity's sake that next year when I do this, any book that I cover here in this video that I have read, I'm going to take off. So I won't be revisiting that again next year. One would hope that eventually I will have read everything or whatever, but it might take a while. Anyway, so let's get started. Okay, so I started the month off with a couple of ebook classics on ebook. And the first is 1984 by George Orwell, which I have not ever read. There was a period of time when everyone said I should be reading it because it was just like, the world. And then things settled down. So I was getting ready to reread it, to get around to reading it because things had settled down. Anyhow, I don't know when I'm going to read this book. I don't know when I'm going to read this book. Also, I read that book. I can't remember what it was called, but it was the one that was about George Orwell's wife. I read that as part of the booktube prize. And he's not a great guy. Just saying. But anyway, I think I did not get this in. It's probably going to wait another 4 years before I read it. Because, yeah. The second book is a different story, though. The second book I have is North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. And I've not yet read this, but I will be reading it. And all I can say is stay tuned for another, I don't know, maybe next week you'll find out, or maybe the week after. I can't remember what day I scheduled the video for. I've already filmed the video, but I will be reading North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I had actually planned to read it this year. I just didn't have time. It's just one of those things that didn't have time. But speaking of honkin' big classics, because North and South is quite big, but one that's even bigger is Les Miserables. And I read it. I did it. I got this. So I had read this before. I'd read an older translation of it. And I got this newer translation, which is excellent. So if you have not read Les Miserables and you want to read Les Miserables, be sure you get the translation by Christine Doniger. And Les Miserables has 365 chapters. So I was going to read one chapter a day and finish on December 30th because, of course, I chose a leap year to do this. But I got ahead of schedule. Some of the chapters are really short. And if they were super short, I'd let myself read ahead another chapter. And then it was a comfort read on November 6th for me. So yeah, I'm done with Les Miserables. I love Les Miserables. I have talked about it in a lot of videos. So we're not going to go into that. So the next one I have not read, and I feel a little guilty about not having read it because it is by a booktuber and one who I really enjoy and I talk with, and it is No Matter What by Erin Nichols. This is her memoir about her relationship with her late husband who was injured in Iraq. And I know it's a sad story. Every time I would look at it, I'd say, okay, I'm not quite there. I'm not quite ready to read this yet, but I am definitely going to read it, Erin. Don't worry, I will read your book. It is on my shelf. I have every intention of reading it. The times when I probably would have been emotionally ready this year, I just didn't have room in my reading schedule for it. So I'm going to make it a priority to read that in 2025. Okay, the next one is the first play we did in the Bard Room. And the Bard Room will be making another appearance here, and that is The Winter's Tale. And just this past week, I revisited my rankings of the plays I have done so far in the Bard Room, and this was my least favorite. But it's still on the shelf because I'm keeping these are my Folger Shakespeare libraries, nice, almost all of them are trade paperbacks. I'm keeping them, they're over there. It's there as a proof that I've read it. That not my favorite Shakespeare, actually so far my least favorite Shakespeare. And the next book I have is one that I got for a book club and then couldn't make the book club. And then I was going to read it for spooky season, didn't read it for spooky season, and it's not very long, so I have no excuse for not having read this book, and I've heard it's great. And this is Ring Shout by Djeli Clark. It is kind of like in my priority little shelf on my Kobo. It is possible, I'm not making any promises. It is possible I will read this before the year is out. We'll see. No promises, but I do want to read it. Okay, then I have a book, and I did not buy this. This ended up being a book club book for me this year, although I had purchased it just on its own. So not really for the book club, but I'm glad because it got me to read this book. And this is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I have heard the audio of this is fantastic. I read it. I loved it. I know people love it or find it incredibly dull. I get that. I get it. But I loved it. It's a beautiful book. It's just beautiful work of writing. And it's Indigenous. I love Indigenous literature. So yeah, I read Braiding Sweetgrass. Okay, the next two books I received in my YOLO Book Club book exchange that I do every year. And I'm not going to revisit with what happened last year because that didn't quite work well, but I have the books. I try to read the books within 1 year. I don't think I've ever been successful doing that, and this is no exception because I've not read either of these books yet. The first one is Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. Heard fantastic things about this book. It is a thriller. Jennifer Loves Books told me that it takes place in her hometown. I think that's what she said. So I have a lot of books on my shelf. Like, and sometimes it just, I just need to get it. If anyone wants to buddy read with me, let me know because that gets me to read these books. And the second book I also have not read, although I don't feel as guilty about that one. And that is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. Now, I love S.A. Cosby. However, he goes to very dark places and he's very violent. And this one deals with some issues that as a parent, I find hard. And I do have every intention of reading it. Unfortunately, without getting too spoilery. I mean, I don't know if you know what's in this book, so I'm not going to spoil it. But if you know, you know. Every time I kind of feel like I'm getting ready to read that book, then something happens to get me away from not reading that book. And that's a very sad thing to say about living in the United States. But there you go. So I don't feel guilty for not having read that yet. I do plan to read it. I don't know when. I don't know when it's going to happen. Sorry. But I do love S.A. Cosby. Also, if you are interested in reading S.A. Cosby, but you've been a little afraid to because of the violence and all that, and it's true, he's very violent. He is actually a great short story writer. And in a lot of, like in the 2023 Best American Mystery and Suspense, he has a story in there. I know there's one. Another one's called Other Horrors. It's a horror anthology. He writes very tight, really good short stories. And because they're short stories, the violence level, because he doesn't have 300 pages, the violence level is much more controlled. So if you are interested in trying S.A. Cosby, but you're worried about the violence, I would say find some of his short stories to read. Okay, so the next book I bought because Sarah at Roadworthy and I did something this year where each quarter we read a book by a Pacific Northwest, United States and Canada, because there aren't a lot of the Pacific Northwest of the United States Indigenous writer. And we read Thunder Song, I think that's the title, by Sasha LaPointe. I purchased Red Paint by Sasha LaPointe. And I had actually planned to read this. I can't remember if I purchased it knowing we were going to do Thunder Song or if that came up later, but I had it and I was hoping to read it before I read Thunder Song. Thunder Point, whatever the name of that book is, Thunder Song. And I just haven't yet, but it is like, it's on my stack of essays books to read. I'm going to finish the essay collection I'm currently reading for this year and then wait until 2025 to start another one. So this one will be read in 2025. Okay. Ooh. And then this year is the first year, and probably, I will be doing this from now on because I thought this was such a great experience, but this is the first year I did Historathon. And if you don't know Historathon, there's actually 2 different read-alongs called Historathon, but this one is a year-long read, and it is focused on history nonfiction. And it is divided up, so quarter 1 is like up to year 500. I can't remember if I have the times right, but it's Fall of Rome was 476, so it's like basically through ancient Rome, and so prehistory through ancient Rome. Quarter 2 is the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages, so 500 to 1500. Quarter 3 is the early modern era, which brings us up to 18 something, and then modern history, 4th quarter. So this was I have 2 books that I read for first quarter of Historathon, and they are both ancient. And the first one was 24 Hours in Ancient Athens by Philip Matyszak. This was a really interesting book in its structure. It basically was 24 chapters. In each chapter, you followed another person who's sort of like, I think they're probably fictional characters, or they are lesser known people from history. But they may brush shoulders with someone who's famous. But it's a very good representation of what life was like in ancient Athens. I thought that was fascinating. And I followed this up by another book. This one was co-written by Philip Matyszak, and Joanne Berry is the other author. And that was A History of Ancient Rome in 100 Lives. And it's pretty much just that. It's 100 sort of mini biographies of people from ancient Rome. And they're organized chronologically, so you do go through the history of Rome with it. It was a great, if you're intimidated by history, both of those are great books because they are very accessible. And the second one, The History of Ancient Rome in 100 Lives, is an easy pick up, put down sort of book. I would recommend both of them. Maybe not like, they aren't super deep on the history. I will say that, not super deep on the history, but that was fine. I enjoyed them. And then we're going to go back to the Bard Room. And these next 3 plays, and I'm going to be honest, I think that I'm missing a play here, but I will get to that. These next 3 plays my husband got me for Christmas. And they're all Shakespeare plays. The one that I think he got me and I'm missing, I'm going to have to go check, is Macbeth. I thought I had Macbeth up on my shelves. I know I didn't buy it for myself, so he must have purchased it for me, but it's not on my spreadsheet. So I don't know. Macbeth may be a thing. But the first one I have here is Twelfth Night, which I did read this past year for the Bard Room. It is my favorite Shakespeare play. I saw it when I was in college, and I did a summer term in England. I saw the Royal Shakespeare Company do it in Stratford. I have wonderful sentimental attachments to this play. I am seeing a live production of it this month. I love Twelfth Night. I was so happy when we chose that one. I was so happy. That one specifically was also part of Shakespeare, and I had coordinated with Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading this year, and she told me what the Shakespeare plays were. And then usually what I do is I draw out of a little tin a play for the next month. But this one, we actually took the Shakespeare plays that we hadn't already read and voted on them. And Twelfth Night was the one that won. So I was very excited to read it. And then I have Henry V, which I have not read. It's not come up in the Bard Room, and I will obviously read these when they come up. But I have seen the Kenneth Branagh movie. I have seen that when we read it. So I do try, I don't always succeed, but I do try to watch an adaptation of the plays after I read them. And I think instead of rewatching the Kenneth Branagh version, I am going to watch the episode of The Hollow Crown, The Hollow Crown is a show that the BBC did, I believe. The first season it's the War of the Roses plays. So the first season is Richard III, Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, and Henry V. So I'll watch Henry V. When I read Henry IV Part 1 this year, I watched the Henry IV Part 1 out of that. What's really cool about this is Henry V is played by Tom Hiddleston. So I will be watching that. And then the next one I have that I have actually read and don't like, but I've only read it. This is sort of the one that kind of got me into thinking that I should do this project because I really don't like this play, but I've only ever read it academically and I might have a very different experience of it reading it on my own. And that is Hamlet. I've done Hamlet like 5 or 6. I did Hamlet 5 or 6 times and it never grew on me, but I was always reading it through an academic lens. So I am very much looking forward to whenever I pull Hamlet out of the tin, giving it a try, not as a student. So we'll see. That leaves me with just, one more book. And this is one we did just recently read, and a play we did just recently read, and that is The Tempest. I had a really, really strong suspicion that my husband would get me The Tempest because that is his favorite Shakespeare play. So he did, and we have read it, and I did very much enjoy it. I think in my rankings, I just put this video out. Is it number 3 or 4? It's in the top 5. It's in the top 5 of my favorite Shakespeare plays. Yeah, so we did The Tempest. And then one last book I have, this was for my Marginalized Authors book club, and it is The Good House by Tananarive Due. Tananarive Due is better known now for The Reformatory, which is a book that I have not yet read. And I debated for a long time whether or not I wanted to read The Reformatory for 2 reasons, one of which is I had already read The Nickel Boys, and it's based on the same school. And second of all, I didn't really like The Good House. I don't know. As a horror novel, it definitely had some things in it that were really good. I thought it was overly long. And yeah, so as a book, that one didn't really work for me. But I've heard such good things about The Reformatory that I may give that one a try. So those are the books. As I said, December's are odd months for this. And I can tell you right now, next December, you're going to get a big old pile of Agatha Christie. At least you're also going to get a bunch of ebooks because I made the mistake of going onto the Kobo site on Cyber Monday. Yeah, I bought 10 books. Anywho, let me count and see how many books I brought in. I can actually go over here and see how many books I have brought in. So in December, I brought in 17 books and I haven't done this count yet. So let's do that. How many of these have I actually read? Not including Hamlet, which I previously read, but not read again. So Les Miserables, The Winter's Tale, Braiding Sweetgrass, 24 Hours in Ancient Athens, A History of Ancient Rome in 100 Lives, Twelfth Night, The Tempest, and The Good House. So I have read 8 of the, what number did I say? I forgot what number I said the first time. I'm going to enter it in my spreadsheet. 8 of the 17 books that I have read, which means I have 52.94% of the books left to go. And I already have a plan to read a couple of them. So we're doing well on that. Yeah. So January or December of my book haul for this month, as I said, it's going to be big, partially because of things like buying my Agatha Christie's for the year, and partially because I very stupidly bought a bunch of ebooks on Kobo, but they were all really cheap and they were all books I want to read. So it's okay, I guess. Also, I've kind of kicked to the curb that goal of finishing the year with one less book than I started because it's not happening. So I will be back to mindful book buying. Actually, I am pretty much back to mindful book buying after that. I don't see myself, I have my book of the month selection still coming, but I don't foresee myself buying myself any more books for the rest of the year, right? Why would I? I'll just tell people I want them as gifts. So we'll see. But I'll get my Yola Boca flood books. Yeah, so there will definitely be a lot of books in this coming December. Just, it's not going to be so much, well, other than the books, it's not going to be so much of my own purchases. Anyway, that was my book haul revisit for December. Again, the books that I have read, I will be taking off. So next year when I revisit this, we're just going to revisit the ones I haven't read, and you'll see if I've read any of them. Plus, of course, whatever I bring in this December. So thank you very much. Like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.